education and comes out of the campus, things will change in the society a great deal. So they have to they have to update their knowledge and their skills then and there for the help for the they're building up their career and also for helping the society when they are in some job or office. So in a future oriented type of education that is fast growing, how can we very clearly and quantifiably measure the skills which of course we have to think far ahead, we have to dream about the skills, and maybe we have to include them in the OBE, in the outcome based education. So these are some of the thoughts that came to my mind when I was thinking about OBE. And also in India, for example, we have the new NEP, this new national education policy, and I have not gone deep into that NEP. So how the NEP visualizes higher education and especially technical education, and how can we integrate this concept or approach of OBE with NEP. So these some of the thoughts I thought just sharing with you at the beginning of this short-term training program. So my congratulations to RSET Rajagiri School of Engineering and Technology, which is conducting this program, and for my thanks for AICT for sponsoring this program. And I know that Dr. O.G. Hagde, the director of IIIT Nagpur, is the keynote, is the person for keynote address. We have such eminent personalities for the as resource persons for the 6-day program. So I am very happy about this, and I'm sure that we will have a great outcome from this program, outcome-based training program. So with these short words, I'm happy to inaugurate this 6-day training program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father. Thank you for inaugurating the session, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on OBE. Let me now invite our principal, Dr. P.S. Srijit, to address the audience.
Thank you, Purnima. Respected Director, Reverend Father Jose Kuriyadatha, keynote speaker, Dr. O.G. Khagde, Director, IIIT Nagpur, Ms. Lisa Annie Joseph, Dr. Manoj Tarian, participants for the program, a warm good morning to you all. At the outset, I take this opportunity to congratulate the Internal Quality Assurance Cell of Rajagiri School of Engineering and Technology and the coordinator of the program, Dr. Manoj Tarian, for conducting such a relevant faculty development program, which has been funded by All India Council for Technical Education. OBE, as I already told, it's a quite relevant subject, especially technical education is concerned. All of us will be knowing that engineering is for improving the quality of life of human beings, as a result of which OBE is more concerned with that of technical education. And what we lacks in technical education also is this OBE. For the last few decades, engineering has also been dealt with that of any other subject without considering the outcome of this engineering. As a result of which, if we take the Indian scenario of our PhD work, etc., many of them are based on simply theoretical work, which does not have an influence in the day-to-day life of human beings. Only around, say, 10 to 15% of the theses, mainly MTech as well as PhD, has got relevance in the society or in the life of that of a human being. And also in the this outcome-based education, as Father has already taught, there has been a lot of limitations as far as this system is concerned. And before this Paddy came into view, William Paddy came into view, who is considered as the father of outcome-based education. All of us will be knowing about Benjamin Bloom, who has been introduced this Bloom's taxonomy, and before that, he came up with the idea of mastery learning, which has been rejected. And what the critics of outcome-based education tells that this is OBE is another form of mastery education. And we should also remember that in some countries like Australia as well as South Africa, it has been to some extent this outcome-based education does not have any relevance. It's because of certain things, even though it is very quite nice to hear about this outcome-based education, but implementation of this, there are a lot of issues regarding the implementation of this outcome-based education, especially in our country, the class size as well as time, this outcome-based education, there are slow learners as well as fast learners are there. So the time is a constraint as far as the outcome-based learning is concerned. And also each of the institutes should be having its own framework on outcome-based education. And now many of the points or ideas of outcome-based education are on spreadsheet, and it should be somehow programmed so that there can be a software or something of that sort so that it can be implemented smoothly. And I hope this will be many of the challenges as well as the outcome-based education is concerned. And during the session, 6-day session for this FDP, all these issues will be discussed and will come up with that of suitable ideas so that this outcome-based education can be implemented in the technical institutions and especially in our institution, which is now going for autonomy. And the outcome-based education provides the learner with the destination of the education journey before voyaging. That's what I think, and I hope that I wish that this 6-day faculty development program to be a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. With this, we come to an end of the inaugural ceremony. I thank all the dignitaries once again for gracing the occasion with your presence. May I now call upon Dr. Manoj G. Tarian, Head of the Department of Mechanical Engineering, to introduce the keynote speaker for today, Dr. O.G. Kakde. Please, sir.
Thank you, Purnima. Good morning to you all. Once again, a very warm welcome to the AICTE-sponsored short-term training program on outcome-based education. It is my privilege to introduce the keynote speaker of the day, Professor O.G. Kakde, Director, Indian Institute of Information Technology, Nagpur. Professor Kakde has completed his BTech in Electronics from VNIT Nagpur, MTech in Computer Science from IIT Powai, and PhD from VNIT Nagpur. Professor Kakde has also served as the director of VJTI Mumbai, one of the oldest technical institutions in India. So far, he has produced 7 PhDs and has several publications to his credit in national as well as international journals. He has authored 6 books in computer science, which are referred for higher studies in national and international level. Professor Kakde has served as chairman and also as member of NBA Evaluation and Accreditation Committee for Tier 1 and Tier 2 institutions on several occasions ever since 2013. Sir, I welcome you to deliver the keynote address.
Yeah. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
You are audible.
Okay, you have to permit me to share my screen. Okay.
Yes, sir. You can share it now.
Okay. So shall I start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir.
At the outset, let me thank organizers of this short-term training program for giving me an opportunity to be a keynote speaker. And I'm going to share whatever little knowledge and experience I have gained over the last 32 years working into teaching profession and spending more than 15 years working with National Board of Accreditation in various capacities. So we will be basically talking about what the outcome-based education is all about. And the outcome of this first presentation will be the participants will get an idea about what outcome-based education or OB is all about. Now, friends, all of you knows that we are living in what we call as a global knowledge society and in an era of disruptive technologies. And this has got huge impact on human lives. It changes everything. The way we lead our life, the way we transact the businesses, everything changed because of these disruptive technologies. And we need to adapt to these changes. And we being academic institutions, we are having a mandate of producing competent human resources. Therefore, huge responsibility lies on our shoulders. So we need to understand what is the need of the hour. Because unless we understand what is the need of the hour, we will not be in a position to live up to the expectations, because our mandate is to produce competent human resources. So let's first understand what is the need of the hour. So we are into business of producing human resources. So what is the need of the hour? So let's understand what are the graduate attributes. We are producing graduates every year. Every year a batch passes out. So what are the attributes that the graduates which are passing out every year should have? Let's try to understand. And when we say graduate attributes, we are referring to basically the knowledge and skills that the graduates will be in a position to demonstrate to the professional world when they will be entering into the professional world. So if we keep in mind the demands of the global knowledge economy, then we need our graduates to be knowledgeable. It means that they should have demonstrated capacity to apply their discipline or domain knowledge to provide solutions to the real world problems and challenges. Because in the professional world, they will be providing solutions to the real world problems. Another attribute is lifelong learning. So our graduates be capable of improving the knowledge, skills, and competences. Because I already told you that we are living in an era of disruptive technologies, which has a huge impact on human life. It changes everything, and we need to adapt to these changes. And therefore, our graduates are required to be lifelong learners. What does it mean? It means that they must have demonstrated capability of improving their knowledge, skills, and competences. They also need to be innovative. What does it mean? It means that they should have capacity to see the new possibilities and opportunities. They should always keep on looking for new possibilities and opportunities and act on them. Then and then only they will be able to adapt to the changes. So our graduates are required to be innovative. They are required to be responsible. What does it mean? It means that they should be aware of their actions on society, sustainability, and ethical practices. This is very much required because unless they're aware of their actions on society, sustainability, they will not be in a position to provide sustainable solutions to the problems that our society is facing. They are also required to be collaborative. It means that they should have efficiency in working with others. They should have competence in conveying their ideas clearly, effectively, and professionally. And that too, to a range of different stakeholders and audiences. And in different cultural frameworks and settings. Or I will say in cross-cultural frameworks and settings. Because we are living in a global knowledge society. And therefore, they should have capability of conveying their ideas clearly, effectively, and professionally in cross-cultural settings. So this is the need of the hour. So this is coupled with the disruptions caused by this COVID-19 pandemic. We need to take into account the new normals because all of us are under lockdown since mid-March in our country. And in many of the countries, it used to be locked down, then there is a phase of unlock and so on because of this COVID-19 pandemic. Nobody expected this. And it is all the economies world over are taking huge toll because of this. And because of this COVID pandemic, we were compelled to stay at home, start working from homes. And some of the changes we were compelled to introduce are irreversible changes. Even though the normalcy will be restored maybe 6 months down the line or maybe a year down the line once we get a vaccine and all those things. So there will be some new normals. So what are those new normals? Now we need this skills adaptability because work from home has become a new normal and we cannot work from home unless we acquire the skills to adapt this new culture of work from home. So basically we need our graduates to impart. We need to impart these skills. We need to develop adaptability. So thinking has become a competence which is very, very important. Look at the level of automation that we are having today. What it was when I was an engineering student and what it is today. Now almost everything is getting automated. And if everything is going to get automated, what you can bring to the table? It's only thinking or innovative thinking, to be more specific, or thinking that you can bring to the rest. And therefore thinking has become a competency. All of us are working in an entirely different setup since mid of March. And all of us want a very rich customized digital experience because we started banking more and more on digital technologies. Even though digital infrastructure is a problem in our country, government will have to take a call. But all of us want a rich customized digital experience. And therefore, customer experience has become a product. Businesses has to accept that customer experience has become a product, and they need to constantly improve the offerings on the customer experience. Then and then only they will be in a position to reach to their customers. Another new normal is we need to focus on specialization. Need capability to solve large-scale population problems. Now, all of you knows because of lockdown, to give an example, all of you knows that because of lockdown, all schools and colleges are closed. And we started doing content delivery in online mode, but it has got lot many problems. Not only content delivery, we have concluded the last academic session through online assessment. It has got problems. And the major problem is we have to reach out to a large scale populations. Our universities and institutions are catering thousands of students and conducting assessment simultaneously for thousands of students in online mode has posed lot many problems. In addition to the problem of digital infrastructure, there were issues of proctoring and all those things. So now we need to focus on specializations, use of technology to address these problems. And we need now more structured or outcome-based collaborations. I'm not saying that we were not collaborating in earlier dispensation. We were collaborating in earlier dispensation, but now we need more structured or outcome-based collaborations. The ad hoc collaborations are not going to work. It will be a best of. So these are some of the new normals that which will be there because of this COVID-19 disruption. So keeping the need of the hour and the new normals which will be there because of this COVID-19 disruption, what our education needs to focus on. We need to focus on workforce or developing workforce, to be more specific, capable of not only retaining what they've learned, but will have a capability of learning new skills and competencies. Our education system, and when I say education system, I'm referring to basically the higher education system, because we need to draw a line between the school education and higher education system. And in higher education also, I'm basically referring to the professional or technical education. So a professional or technical education need to focus on developing workforce capable of not only retaining what they learned, but should have capability of learning the new skills and competencies. And we need to develop creativity, application, analysis and synthesis, and collaborative. We need to basically work on these competencies: creativity, application, analysis, and synthesis, and collaborative, because these are the demands of the global knowledge or global knowledge society. So we want our education system to focus on these things. Now, taking a call. Recently, the Cabinet of the Union of India has approved the new national education policy, which is called as NEP 2020, which will try to address some of these issues. What is the focus of NEP 2020? Again, these are some of the key features of NEP 2020 in the context of higher education. The main thrust of higher education in NEP 2020 will be on multidisciplinary education and providing more flexibility, which was very much needed in our education system. So there were a lot many deliberations done by the drafting committee of NEP 2020, which was chaired by Dr. Kasturi Jangan. And this NEP 2020 is an outcome of all the deliberations which they had over several years. So while drafting this policy, they have taken into account the factors which are spelled out. What is the need of the hour? And therefore, the main thrust is on multidisciplinary education and flexibility. Because all of you knows that when we need graduates to apply their domain knowledge to solve real world problems, all of you knows that the real world problems are really complex problems. And to solve these problems, we often need a multidisciplinary approach. A unidisciplinary approach doesn't work. We are living in an era of cooperation, not confrontation, in an era of convergence of technologies. And therefore, we need basically multidisciplinary approach. And we need the flexibility also. And that is why the main thrust of NEP 2020 is on multidisciplinary. It focuses on holistic education aimed at developing all the capacities of human beings: intellectual, aesthetic, social, physical, emotional, and moral in an integrated manner. Because we need to develop well-rounded person. Because many of these things matters when our graduate works in a professional. Simply having domain knowledge doesn't help. The emphasis of the new education policy is on communication, discussion, debate, research, and interdisciplinarity. So this is the way it's trying to address the problems which our education system was focused on. It talks about credit-based courses and projects in the areas of community engagement and service, environmental education, climate change, pollution, waste management, and biodiversity. And it focuses on internships and in local industry or businesses, as well as research. So these are some of the key features of NEP 2020, through which it provides for addressing the problems faced by our education system. Now, NEP 2020 has been formally approved. Of course, we have a long way to go. The reason is education being in a concurrent list, unless state government accepts the NEP 2020, this implementation will be an issue. So it has been formally approved, and now the government is in the process of preparing an action plan for its effective implementation. A lot of discussions, deliberations are going on, and then it will be coming up with an action plan for implementation of NEP. Now, when it will come to implementation of the provisions of NEP 2020, as well as to address the need of the hour, taking into account the new normals because of this COVID-19 disruptions, we'll be needing a suitable model of education. So which model of education will be suitable, which will allow us effective implementation of the provisions of NEP 2020? Will take care of developing the graduate attributes, which I already spelled out, which will take into account the new normals because of the COVID-19 disruptions. So let's find out, or let's try to find out the conventional model of education. What is conventional model of education? Whether it will be suitable for effective implementation of NEP 2020 or not. If not, which model will be required? So all of us are familiar with the conventional model of education. And a conventional model of education treats education as mere transmission of expert knowledge. So in a conventional model of education, we treat education as mere transmission of expert knowledge. A teacher goes to the class, do the content delivery, which is transmission of expert knowledge, without bothering about whether the learning of the student has really taken place, or whether the required skills and competencies he or she could develop the required skills and competencies or not. So in a conventional model of education, education is treated as mere transmission of expert knowledge. No accountability. So teacher goes to the class, goes to the lab, do the content delivery, demonstrate how the experiments have to be carried out. That's all, that's the end of it. Now the major weakness of this model is that it does not ensure accountability. And it does not bother about development of the required skills which the graduate is required to demonstrate when he or she enters into the profession. This is a major weakness of it. And that's the reason why this model is criticized, especially when it comes to professional or technical education. All of you knows that engineering is required to be practiced. And in this model, we forget that engineering is required to be practiced. And that's the reason why the academia is always criticized by industry, which employs our engineering graduates, that the students doesn't know anything. Because in this model, we are not bothered about development of the skills which graduates are required to demonstrate to the profession. We don't bother about the learning of an average student. That's the major weakness of this. And therefore, this model is not at all suitable when it comes to implementing the provisions of NEP 2020 or developing the graduate attributes, which is the need of the hour, taking into account the new normal. And therefore, we need a new model of education, or we need a new approach. So, which approach will be suitable? See, we want to basically address the need of the hour. And the need of the hour is that we should focus on developing the required knowledge and skills, ensuring learning of an average student, which is not possible with conventional model of education. So we need a new approach. In this approach, the first thing that will be required to be done, the first thing that we will have to do is, or the first thing that is required to be done is, let us spell out explicitly and clearly what knowledge and skills required to be developed in our graduates. We call it as outcome statements. So basically, outcome is a terminology that we use to refer to the knowledge and skills. So let's have an approach in which first we will be clearly defining or spelling out the knowledge and the skills that we need to develop in our graduates. We call them as outcome statements. Once we do it, then we will reorienting our teaching and all other academic processes to develop the knowledge and the skills which were spelled out through our graduate outcome statements. So it's a sort of backward design process. So first we will be spelling out clearly what knowledge and skills we need to develop, and then we will be reorienting our teaching and our academic processes to do so. After reorienting teaching and other academic processes to do so, we need to find out whether this reorientation has resulted in development of the knowledge and the skills which you have spelled out through our graduate outcome statements or not. And for this, we will be requiring to put in place an adequate or a proper assessment mechanism in place to assess the achievement of the students. So we have to develop and put a proper assessment mechanism in place to assess the achievement of the student. And the results of this assessment will tell us whether we could develop required knowledge and skills or not. If not, we need to improve. We need to improve means we need to do some fine tuning, or we need to do some major changes in our teaching, academic processes. So we need an approach in which first we'll be clearly spelling out what knowledge and skills we need to develop or we are required to develop. Based on that, orienting our teaching and other academic processes to do so. Based on that, designing a proper assessment mechanism and putting it in place, and then using the results of this assessment for improving it. So it's basically a cyclic process. And a model of education based on this approach is called as an outcome-based approach, because the focus of this model is on development of the required knowledge and skills, which we call as graduate outcomes or program outcomes, different nomenclatures, or graduate attributes. So OBE or outcome-based education is a model of education based on this. And what does this model specifies? It works on 4 things. Say means please spell out what knowledge and skills you are required to develop. Do. So reorient your academic processes, teaching, learning, everything to do so. Prove. That means do the assessment. And if needed, so we call it a say, do, prove, and improve. Now this model is definitely going to address the problem that conventional model of education was facing. Because we have seen the major weakness of the conventional model of education, which treats education as mere transmission of experience, not at all suitable to cater to the requirement of today's global knowledge society, and will not at all take care of implementation of the provisions of NEP 2020, because NEP 2020 has been framed keeping in mind what is the need of the global knowledge society. So don't look at NEP 2020's provisions in isolation. So some of the key features are spelled out. Those key features are there in NEP 2020 for addressing the need of the hour. So these things are interconnected. Because the focus of this model is on basically developing the required knowledge and skills, which our graduates will be demonstrating to the world. And this is the major concern of industry. All of us in academics knows that we are criticized for this. Our graduates are not capable of doing anything. Because when they enter into the digital world, they are not in a position to demonstrate the required knowledge and skills to do the job. And that will be the focus of this model of education. So we need a new model of education based on this approach, and this model of education is called as an outcome-based education. So this is a model in which first we need to specify or spell out knowledge and skills required to be developed. Then we need to do that, means orient our teaching and academic processes to do so. We need to put a proper assessment mechanism in place, and then we need to go for improvement if the results of the assessments are not up to the mark. So it's a cyclic process. So outcome-based education is a model of education based on this. And this model is definitely going to address the problems that our education system was facing, because it was using the conventional model of education. And therefore, I will say OB is the need of the hour. And I again want to reiterate, my context is especially professional and technical education. Yes, the father in his opening remarks spelled out that OB is criticized also. Yes, outcome-based education is criticized also. And the main criticism of OB is that it is not possible to define clear and measurable outcomes. And outcomes are nothing but knowledge and skills. So it's not possible always to define the clear and measurable outcomes. Yes, that is the criticism, that is the main criticism. It may be true in school education when But when it comes to professional and technical education, this is not a major, because we can clearly spell out what knowledge and skills our graduates will be in a position to demonstrate the profession. And if we can clearly spell out the knowledge and skills, then there is no issue with. Because if we can't define the outcome clearly, it does not become measurable. Therefore, assessment becomes an issue. And therefore, we find that OBE does not give the result. But this is not a problem with OBE itself or this model itself. This is a problem with defining the graduate outcomes. So if we take care while defining the graduate outcomes, that our outcomes will be clear and measurable, then there is no issue. So this is not a problem with OBE itself, it's a problem with its implementation. Because OBE says that the first thing that you have to do is you need to define the graduate outcomes. Now, how you're defining the graduate outcomes is an implementation issue. It has nothing to do with the model itself. So I will not say it's a failure on the part of the model or it's a criticism of the model. It's an issue with implementation. So if adequate care is taken at the time of defining the graduate outcomes, then everything falls in line. And if you look at this model of education, you will find that it is a learner-centric model of education. Because our focus is not on simply transmission or imparting expert knowledge to the student, but focus is on developing the knowledge and the skills which the graduates will have to demonstrate. So the focus is on ensuring the learning of an average student. Because our experience of using the conventional model for so many years is that even after providing very good quality teaching, or even if we provide very good quality teaching, it does not automatically ensure learning. So we need to change our focus. Now, I am not underestimating or undermining the importance of the quality teaching that will still be required. Otherwise, I will be misconstrued when I'm talking about the weakness of the conventional model. Yes, good quality teaching is required. But in conventional model, the focus was only on good quality teaching without bothering about whether the learning of an average student has taken place or not, whether we could develop required knowledge and skills or not. Now the focus is on this. And that is the reason why it is called as a learner-centric system. The focus of the new model is on ensuring learning of an average student. And that is what is the need of the hour. Because see, the education had changed over a period of time. The context has changed. The education at my parents' time was different. Education at my time, some 35 years back, was different. Now it is different. When a student takes an admission, he or she is not only paying the fees, but he or she is investing some important years of his or her life. And all of us knows that the entire society has changed, the value system has changed. So there should be return on investment. So if a student takes admission for 4 years undergraduate engineering program, he or she is investing 4 important years of his or her life. So if he or she is expecting return on the investment, there is nothing wrong in addition to fees. So time has changed. All of us knows that even though GR is a problem and NEP 2020 is talking about increasing GR, even though it has gone up over last decade. So GR, if you look 30 years back or 25 years back, GR today and GR which is targeted, you will find that we are expanding our education. And this expansion has created problem of quality. Expansion was needed or not? Yes, it was needed. It can be debated. Some people will say that expansion was not needed because you know that in last 3 decades we have expanded a lot, especially in professional education, or I will say technical education, by permitting private players. Some people may criticize it, but yes, it has addressed the problem of access to the education. It has led to the increase in GR. It was, but it has created the problem of quality. And to address the problem of quality, we are talking about access. So we need basically a system which will be focusing on ensuring learning of the student. It should not be teacher-centric. It should be learner-centric. So this new model of education, which we call as outcome-based education, because it ensures learning of an average student. The focus is on development of the required knowledge. So this new model is a learner-centric. Takes care of ensuring learning of an average student. And our focus should be like that because it ensures return on investment that is student. Otherwise, why a student should take admission? Why you are seeing the youth in terms of fees as well as in terms of some number of years. The time has changed. Even the policy makers are not ready to accept the excuse that we, especially from teaching fraternity, used to do many a times. So if the quality of input intake or input is bad and therefore we can't do anything. No. When a student takes admission to your college, he or she is coming through the same gate after qualifying the same entrance test. The benchmarks are decided by the national level regulator. Whether those benchmarks are on the lower side or on higher side, that can be debated out. They are on the lower side. That's what many people say, and because of that, we can't improve the quality of education. Many times teachers is to argue like this. But policymakers are not going to accept this argument as a thing. Because he or she has qualified the entrance examination, got admitted into a system. Now it becomes your responsibility to ensure the learning of that student. Time has changed. Let me share one remark which I heard. I was attending one meeting. I remember somewhere in planning commission some 5-6 years back when I was at BJTI. And that meeting was chaired by some lady secretary. And in her opening remark, she said, and it was in connection with the quality of education itself. She said, like, there is no concept of bad mother. A mother can never be bad. There is no concept of bad student. If a student is not performing in your system, it reflects on it. It talks about learner-centric system. And OBE as a model of education takes care of it. So we need this model. And we need to implement this model properly. Otherwise, we will have to face the criticism. Already told you there is a criticism. But that criticism is not of the model itself. There are issues in implementation. The model talks about only spelling out the knowledge and skills. Now, how clearly you spells out it, it depends on. If you're unable to clearly spells out it, it won't become measurable. There will be issues of assessment, and therefore it doesn't serve the purpose. So it's an issue with implementation. So we need to implement this model in true spirit to take care of what is the need of the hour. So this new model of education is a learner-centric model. And why it is called as outcome-based education model? Because I told you it's basically developing the required knowledge and skills. So it is change not many things if we implement this model in true spirit. Now it will change everything, including it will change everything starting from curriculum design up to teaching, learning, and assessment. Because the assessment in the conventional model was to be done in a different manner. The content delivery was to be done in a different manner. We were not exploring the different pedagogies because we were treating education as transmission of expert knowledge only. The curriculum design was to be done in a different manner. Now everything is going to change when we go for implementation of this model. The curriculum design has to be a backward design process. What knowledge and skills you need to develop. To develop the required knowledge and skills, which course modules are required, what way the content delivery is to be done will be decided, not other way around. Whereas in a conventional model, it was a forward design process. As a teacher, I have attended several curriculum design workshops, and I saw the scenario: 4 teachers sitting across the table fighting for their courses. Everybody was saying that my course is very, very important. Without that, a student cannot become a good engineer, and so on and so forth. Now, everything has changed when we go for implementation of this model. Your course will find a place in the curriculum only when it is relevant. So question of relevance comes. That means if it contributes in development of the required skills and knowledge, then only it will find a place, otherwise. So curriculum design is not to be done the same way. Now we cannot say we should have 4 mathematics courses, 3 physics courses, or 2 engineering mechanics courses or something of that sort. No. It will be decided by what knowledge and skills you need to do. If it is required for that, it will find a place in the curriculum. Otherwise, it won't find a place in the curriculum. So curriculum design itself will change. The way we'll be doing the content delivery will also change. Because some of the skills that we are talking about as a part of our graduate outcomes or graduate attributes are not possible to be developed inside a classroom. For that, we need participation of the students outside the classroom activities. We need students to participate in some activities or in the learning activity in a collaborative manner. So the standard conventional content delivery method is not going to work. We need to think of new pedagogies. Like we talk about problem-based learning, project-based learning, cooperative learning, inquiry-based learning. We need to use a combination of all of them. I'm not saying that these pedagogies are going to replace the conventional one and conventional won't have any place. No. So let's not construe that OBE is something new. It is an extension of what we were doing. But now we will be required to do it in a more accountable manner. So a model of education based on this new approach is called as outcome-based education model. So we call it a say, do, prove, improve approach. Say means spell out what skills, knowledge you want to develop. Do means put a mechanism in place for doing that. Prove means do the assessment properly, and based on the result of assessment, try to increase the cyclic process. So in nutshell, what are the important characteristics of OBE? The important characteristics of OBE are the measurement of academic success, the major shift. We call it as a paradigm shift. The major shift is the measurement of academic success is done by what students actually learn and not by how much time or money they spend. In this model, the real results are important and not the pleasant intentions. In earlier model, the intentions were very good, but not yielding any results. So don't you see that this makes our system more accountable? Success is measured by what the students actually learn, what they are capable of doing. It ensures accountability of the education system. So these are the important characteristics of it, which were missing in earlier model. Let me reiterate again that I am not underestimating the importance of good quality teaching which is required. So it's not the case that in the new model, we won't be requiring good teachers. We will still be requiring good teachers. So these are the important characteristics of OBE. And what OBE had changed, or what OBE changes. It changes the following. It fundamentally challenges the teachers to re-examine what they do as a teachers and the way they do it. So already made it clear that we still require good teachers, but the teachers will have to change when they participate in curriculum design process. They no longer will have to sit with the same mindset. They'll have to change their mindset. So they will have to re-examine what they were doing. They will have to think of a course module which will really contribute in development of the required knowledge and skills. And not simply because they have learned those things and therefore they will continue to teach those students. No. When it comes to content delivery, they will have to focus on doing the content delivery, using the pedagogies in such a manner that it will lead to development of the required knowledge and skills. They will have to focus on what the students are expected to know and do, and not simply transmit the expert. The teachers will have to change the obsession for teaching to obsession for learning and relearning. Certain things are required to be unlearned, which they were doing. They will have to relearn. OBE says that teaching is a complex and intellectually challenging process. It's not mere transmission of the knowledge. What I know, I will be just disseminating it. Of course, knowledge dissemination is required, but it's not restricted to that. And the basic premise of OBE is all the students are capable of learning and worthy of teachers. Of course, many from my fraternity won't agree with that. But yes, this is a ground level reality that we have to accept because of expansion. And when we are talking about increasing GR, taking it to 50%, you cannot work with the mindset that only 5% students are capable of learning, worthy of teacher support. Every student is capable of learning, provided we facilitate learning. So OBE changes these things. So that's all about OBE. That's all from my side. Thank you. I hope it must have made clear to the participants what this new model of education, which we call as outcome-based education model, is all about. Thank you for patiently listening. Now I can take up questions, if any, and I will try my level best to answer, because I don't consider myself as expert. I have shared whatever little knowledge and experience I have gained over last 32 years of career in this teaching profession and spending some 15 odd years working with National Board of Accreditation in different capacities. Thank you.
So thank you very much, sir, on the wonderful introduction to outcome-based education. The need for outcome-based education and the significance of OBE in the new national education policy was very well explained in the introductory note. Thank you very much, sir. Now, for the kind information of all, we will have a short break now for 15 minutes. The class on key components of outcome-based education by Professor Kakade will begin at 11:15, 15 minutes past 11 o'clock. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm not overshoot. I could finish by 11.
Thank you very much, sir. Exactly sharp 11 o'clock. Thank you, sir.
So we'll meet again at 11:50.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
School of Mechanical Engineering, Rajagiri School of Engineering and Technology. Next, we have a session on key components of outcome-based education by Dr. O.G. Kaklesa. I'll be the moderator for this session. So, dear participants, I request you all to use the chat option to post your queries. We'll have the discussion at the end of the session. I welcome Dr. O.G. Kaklesa and I'll welcome you all to the session. Sir, we are ready, sir. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, we can see. So can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir. We can see the presentation.
Okay. So good afternoon. Welcome back. Now this presentation will be about what are the constituents of OBE. In the morning session, I already briefed all of you about what this new model of education is all about. Now we'll be discussing what are the constituents of OBE, and then in the post-lunch session, we'll be discussing how to go for drafting vision, mission, POs, and so on. So what are the constituents of outcome-based education system, outcome-based education? So as I already spelled out in my morning session, OBE is a model of education in which we first spell out what knowledge and skills we need to develop in our students. Accordingly, we reorient our teaching, learning, and all other academic processes. We put a proper assessment in place, and then based on the result of the assessment, if required, we go for improvements. So OBE as a model of education uses this approach. So if you look at the approach that this model of education uses, the most important thing that we need to do is we need to spell out, or we need to define what knowledge and skills we need to develop in our lives. And we call them as graduate outcomes or program outcomes or graduate attributes. These are the different nomenclatures. So in general, the definition of outcomes or program outcomes or graduate outcomes is program outcomes refers to the knowledge and skills which our graduates will be in a position to demonstrate to the professional world whenever they will be entering into the profession. So outcomes, the terminology used to refer to the knowledge and the skills. And therefore, the most important constituent of OBE are the graduate outcomes or the program outcomes. No further explanation is required to be given for that. So program outcomes or graduate outcomes is the most important constituents of OBE. But the next slide, which I will be presenting to you, says that so the next slide, which I'm going to present it to you, says that in addition to the program outcomes, vision, mission statements, program educational objectives, program specific outcomes, and course outcomes are the constituents of it. So I need to elaborate upon this point, because in the morning session, when I was talking about this new model of education, which we call an outcome-based education model, it is based on an approach in which the first thing that we do is we define the program outcomes or graduate outcomes. So I'm going to use the terminology graduate outcomes, program outcomes, or graduate attributes interchangeably. And they refer to the skills and the knowledge that the graduates of the program will be in a position to demonstrate to the population. And therefore, it goes without saying that program outcomes is an important constituent of it. And in the list which I presented to you, I've listed down that POs are program outcomes as one of the constituents of it. But in addition to that, vision, mission statement, program educational objectives, program specific outcomes, and course outcomes are also listed as constituents of it. Why? We need an answer to this question. Otherwise, I would have straight away presented that these are the constituents, vision means this, vision means this. So rather than going for that, first let me explain why vision mission is a constituent of it, why POs, why PSOs and COs are also the constituents of it. I don't think I need to give any explanation for why POs are the constituents of OB. Because the approach that OB uses specifies that the first thing that you have to do is you need to specify the program outcomes or graduate outcomes. So you need to spell out the knowledge and the skills which you want to develop. Therefore, program outcomes is one of the constituents of B. But why vision mission? Now, as I said, in OBE model, you need to first define what knowledge and skills you are required to develop in your students or graduates. We call it as defining program outcomes. Now my question is to all the participants is, can you define what knowledge and skills you need to develop or you are required to develop in your graduates or the students you are admitted to a particular engineering program without knowing or without deciding the intention with which you are running that engineering program? For example, your engineering college is running a mechanical engineering program with, let's say, 120 index. So every year you are admitting 120 students to this program. Now you need to define or spell out what knowledge and skills you need to develop in these 120 students, which they will be in a position to demonstrate to the professional world 4 years down the line, because it's a 4 years program. Now, can you define the knowledge and skills that you want to develop in these 120 students which you are admitting to first year of mechanical engineering program of your college without knowing with what intention your college is running that mechanical engineering program? Can you do it? The answer is no. So it is very much required to know with what intention your college is running a mechanical engineering program to which you are admitting 120 students. And therefore, you need to basically decide with what intention you are running the mechanical engineering. And nobody is going to tell that. Intention is yours. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to basically spell out the intent with which you are running a particular program. Then and then only you will be in a position to decide what skills and knowledge, what knowledge and skills you will be developing, or you are required to develop in the students whom you are admitting to that particular engineering. So can you go for implementation of OBE straight away by spelling out your program outcomes? Answer is no. You cannot define your program outcomes, which are nothing but statements of what knowledge and skills you want to develop, unless you define the intent with which you are running that particular. Therefore, it is mandatory to define first the intent with which you are running a particular engineering. Now, can you define the intent with which you are running a particular engineering program without knowing what as an institution you are aspiring for in long term or mid term? Again, the answer is no. So, your institution as a whole is aspiring for what? And what is the action plan to fulfill those aspirations? Without knowing that, can you decide the intent with which a particular engineering program in your institution or intent with which you are running a particular engineering program in your institution? The answer is no. So to define the program outcomes, first you need to define the intent with which you are running various engineering programs in your institution. Like if your institution is offering electrical, mechanical, civil. So with what intent you are running a civil engineering program? Because that is going to decide what skills or what knowledge and skills you will be developing in 60 or 120 or 180 students who will be admitting to civil engineering program. Similarly, you need to define the intent with which you are running a mechanical engineering program, because without that, you cannot define the knowledge and skills you will be developing or imparting to the students who will be admitting to the mechanical engineering program. So for each engineering program, you need to spell out the intent. But can you do it without knowing? All these programs are offered by your institute. So for each program, what is your intent? Can you decide this without knowing what as an institution you are aspiring for and what is an action plan for achieving those things or fulfilling those aspirations? It's not. And therefore, the first thing that you have to do is you need to spell out what as an institution you are aspiring for and what is your action plan for fulfilling those aspirations. Unless you do it, you will not be in a position to define or spell out the intent with which you are running the various programs in the institution. Without that, you will not be in a position to spell out or define the knowledge and skills you will be developing or developing in those programs. And therefore, if you want to go for implementation of OBE, the first thing that you have to do is you need to spell out or you need to define what as an institution you are aspiring for in mid-term or long-term and what is your action plan for fulfilling those aspirations. That will allow you to define the intent with which you are running the various engineering programs. That will allow you to decide what knowledge and skills you will be developing in the students you will be admitting to these programs. So you have to begin with defining what you are aspiring for as an institution. And therefore, the vision statement of an institution is the one with which you need to begin with. Because unless you specify what you are aspiring for as an institution, and accordingly, what is your action plan for fulfilling the aspiration, you will not be in a position to define the intent with which you are running various programs. And you will not be in a position to spell out the knowledge and skills that you need to develop in the students who will be admitting to this programs. So it begins with defining what you are aspiring for. Based on that, drafting an action plan for fulfilling the aspirations. Based on that, defining the intent with which you are running the different programs. And based on that, finally, you will be in a position to spell out the knowledge and skills you will be developing in the students who will be admitting to those programs. So you have to begin with defining what you are aspiring for. And defining what you are aspiring for is nothing but defining what is called as a vision statement. And therefore, vision statement becomes one of the constituents of the dependency. So you have to first define the vision statement of an institution. Next thing that you have to do is, once you have defined what you are aspiring for, next you have to draft an action plan for fulfilling the aspirations. And an action plan for fulfilling the aspirations constitutes what we call as mission statements. Therefore, mission statements becomes another constituent of it. So you have to begin with vision statement. From vision statement, because there is a dependency, what you are aspiring for is going to decide what is your action plan for fulfilling the aspiration. So from vision statement, you will be deriving mission statements. And in connection with that action plan, you will be spelling out or taking into account that action plan for fulfilling the aspiration. You will be in a position to spell out the intent with which you are running the various engineering programs in your institute. So program educational objectives are nothing but the statements spelling out the intent with which you are running a particular engineering program, and accordingly how you are doing the management of the teaching learning process for that particular program. So that's why the name program educational objectives. They are not educational objectives. They are specific to the program. So POs for civil engineering are different from POs for computer science and engineering. POs for civil engineering will specify the intent with which you are running that program, and accordingly how you are doing the management of the teaching learning. Now, every time I am saying intent with which a particular engineering program, what does it specify? Basically, it specifies what you're preparing the students that you will be admitting to that program. For example, you are admitting 60 students to civil engineering program. So what your POs are specifying? Your POs are specifying what you're preparing those 60 students for. So whether you are preparing them to take up gainful employment in multinationals, or whether you're preparing them to take up jobs in local industry, local infrastructure industry, or whether you're preparing them to become practitioners or freelancers, or you're preparing them to pursue research in a specific sub-area of civil engineering, What you're preparing your students for? Don't you see it is an intent with which you are running a civil engineering program? Yes. Similarly, when you are admitting, let's say, 60 students to mechanical engineering, the program educational objectives of mechanical engineering will spell out what you're preparing those 60 students for. And it also specifies accordingly how you are doing the management of the teaching learning process for that. For example, if I spelled out that my intention of the civil engineering program or running civil engineering program is to prepare the 60 students I'm admitting to pursue higher studies or pursue research. Don't you see that once I decide this, okay, this is the intent, the management of the teaching learning process for civil engineering program has to be done accordingly. My focus should always be on the research component or developing the skills which are required to pursue research. Whereas if I say that preparing these 60 students to take up gainful employment in infrastructure industry, then I will have to manage my 4 years teaching learning accordingly. I need to focus more on developing the skills required by infrastructure industry, the specific skills as well as generic skills. So once you decide the vision and mission in line with that, for every engineering program, you are deciding the program educational objectives, the intent with which you are running that program, and accordingly how you are doing the management of the teaching learning process for that. Therefore, POs also becomes an important constituent of OB. And unless you define POs, you cannot define program outcome, because there's I already made it clear. Unless you decide what you're preparing your 60 students that you are admitting to a particular program for, you will not be in a position to define what knowledge and skills are required. I'm not saying that the knowledge and skills required to be developed in the students form this joint set. For example, if my PO for a particular engineering program says that I'm preparing the students to pursue research, and for another program it says that I'm preparing my students to take up only gainful employment, the knowledge and skills required to be developed for these two intentions, they will not form a disjoint sets. There will be overlap, but definitely some of the skills required will be different depending upon that. Some specific skill set required to pursue research, which is not required when it comes to working in an industry. Another skill set will be required. So don't you see that? The skill set is talked about by program outcomes. Can you define your program outcomes unless you define your program educational objectives? That's why POs becomes an important constituent of program. So here comes about program outcomes. So I think it must have made it clear, even though in OB we say that we need to define the graduate outcomes, then reorient your academic processes, teaching learning processes to do so, put a proper assessment and improve. So prima facie, it gives an impression that only program outcome should be the constituent of MBA, but you cannot define your program outcomes unless you define program educational objectives. And program educational objective depends on vision and mission statement. Therefore, mission statement, program educational objectives, and program outcomes are important constituents of it. In addition to these two, I listed down program specific outcomes and course outcomes. I will be talking about program outcomes and course outcomes in due course. Why they are also the important constituents. But if you look at the terminology, see, starting from third line, all are outcomes. So whether they are program outcomes, program specific outcomes, or course outcomes, they talks about knowledge and skills. All of them can be grouped under one class. Whereas objectives are different. They spell out intent. Vision statement talks about different. Mission statement. So if I want to put it in a nutshell, vision, mission statement, program educational objectives, and outcomes. Outcomes includes program outcomes, program specific outcomes, and course outcomes. What is the difference? I will explain. So it begins with drafting vision statement. So what is vision statement? I already made it clear. It is an aspirational description of what an organization. Your organization means I am referring to your institution. It's a generic definition. So it is an aspirational description of what an organization would like to achieve or accomplish in midterm or long. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to decide for your institution what you are aspiring for or what you would like to achieve maybe 10 or 15 years down the line. Unless you decide that, you will not be in a position to decide anything. That's the reason why vision statement is very, very important. And if you want to go for implementation of OB, you need to begin with drafting achievable vision statement. In the post-lunch session, we will be talking about the process that we need to follow, the factors that are required to be considered for defining vision statement, and we will be discussing. In this presentation, it is enough to know that we have to begin with, when it comes to implementing, we're going to begin with defining a vision statement. So what is a vision statement? It is an aspirational description of what you would like to achieve or accomplish, maybe 10 years, 15 years down the line. So it's an aspirational description, what you would like to be 10 years or 15 years down the line. That you need to decide. Of course, what factors are required to be taken into account, that we will be discussing in post-lunch session. But it begins with vision statement. And as I already made it clear, the vision statement should be achievable. Because you are spelling out what you would like to be or what you would like to achieve maybe 10 or 15 years down the line. But whatever you're spelling out as you want to achieve so and so thing 10 years down the line should be achievable, should be realistic. Otherwise, at many places I found that vision statement talks about certain things which is not realistic. You know the time period. You know what you are today. So taking into account all those factors, you need to define a realistic or achievable vision statement. Now, once you decide your vision statement, which is an aspiration description or what you are aspiring for in midterm or long term, maybe 10 years, 15 years down the line. The next thing that you have to do is you have to define an action plan for achieving your vision. So mission statements are essentially the means to achieve the vision. They spell out or they spells out what you will be required to do or the action plan for achieving your vision. So you have to first draft a vision statement, then draft the mission statements, which spells out what you will be doing to achieve your vision. And I said mission statements. Being an action plan, it will not be a single statement. It may be 3-4 statements specifying that this is what I will be required to do, followed by this, so as to achieve my vision. So vision statement, it spells out what you are aspiring for. And therefore, I already made it clear that it should be achievable. It should be simple, easy to understand also. It should not be very complex, a paragraph type of thing. Because you have to be realistic. What you can achieve in 10 years or 15 years. Otherwise, at many places, people combine several things that they want to achieve X, Y, Z, everything. So once you decide which vision statement next, you will be drafting the mission statements. Now, once you finalize your action plan, the mission statements, you need to decide for every engineering program that you are offering in your, or every program that you are offering. It not necessarily be engineering. If it is a management institution, whichever management program you're offering. For every program that you're offering, you need to spell out, depending upon vision and mission, what is the intent with which you are running that program, and accordingly how the management of teaching learning for that program is. Already made it clear. I had thrown a light on that. If you're running civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. So depending upon your vision and mission, you need to spell out with what intention you are running that program. That means whenever you will be admitting 60 students, 120 students, 180 students, what you will be preparing them for? If this intention is not clear, you cannot decide what skills and knowledge you will be imparting to them. Everything will be done in an ad hoc manner, which we were doing in earlier dispensation when we were using conventional model, when we are talking about the new model, which makes our system more accountable. Everything needs to be clearly defined. And I already made it clear. My intent has to be spelled out. Because that is, and accordingly, how I will be doing the management of the teaching learning process. So first I need to spell out my intent, whether I will be preparing them to take up jobs, gainful employment in multinational, or career in public service only, or pursue research, or become practitioners or freelancers. Because that is going to decide the management of the teaching learning process. When I say management of teaching learning process, means that is going to decide what breadth of the knowledge is required to be given to them, what professional skills we must develop in them, and what sort of learning environment we need to provide to them. All these are the part of the management of teaching learning process. Because depending upon intent, if I want to prepare them to take up gainful employment in industry, what breadth of knowledge is required, what professional skills are required to be developed, what learning environment I need to provide, will be different than when I say I need to prepare students to take up higher studies or research. I'm not saying it will be totally different, but yes, there will be difference and there will be overlap. That's why POs are spelling out intent with which you are running a particular program and accordingly how you are doing the management process for that program. You cannot do this without vision and mission statements. So next will be POs, and then for every program, depending upon POs, you need to specify the graduate outcomes or program outcomes. It talks about the knowledge and skills the students will be in a position to demonstrate to the professional world after completing the program. So next you can define, depending upon the POs, you can decide the POs or graduate outcomes. Now this PSOs is an additional thing. Otherwise, these are only outcomes, program outcomes and course outcomes. This PSOs came in the context of accreditation done by National Board of Accreditation. Now, why this PSOs came into play? Otherwise, when we say program outcomes, it should cover everything. So why this PSO terminology also came into picture? In what sense they are different from POs? So we have to look at it from NBA's accreditation point of view. And all of you know that NBA carries out accreditation of engineering programs, engineering management, wherever NBA accreditation is applicable. It's a program level accreditation, not institute level accreditation as done by NAC. So these two terminologies, otherwise, only program outcomes is the component. It covers everything. So let me explain what are these PSOs, why they are come. Now, as far as program outcomes are concerned, for NBA accreditation, NBA has given a list of 12 program outcomes. Spelling out the knowledge and skills required to be developed in every engineering graduate. They have taken that list from Abbott's document. So if you look at the annexure that is there with SAR of NBA, you will find that a list of 12 program outcomes, which they call as graduate attributes. But they clearly mentioned that these graduate attributes are required to be considered as program. So those 12 statements are specifying the knowledge and skills required to be developed. But if you look at those 12 graduate outcome statements, you will find they are spelling out knowledge and skills which every engineering graduate is required to acquire, and therefore they are generic in the sense. That means across all the disciplines, whether a graduate is a mechanical engineering graduate or civil engineering graduate or electrical engineering graduate or CSE graduate, irrespective of that, he or she must acquire these 12 or must be in a position to demonstrate these 12 outcomes. Therefore, they're generic in nature. So if you go to the list of those 12 outcomes, you will find that they are specifying knowledge and skills which are generic in nature. It doesn't matter whether I'm pursuing civil engineering as a student or pursuing mechanical engineering, I must acquire the knowledge and the skills specified by these 12 program outcomes. But all of you knows that in addition to these, when we work in a particular domain, we need to demonstrate some domain specific skills. So in addition to these, in addition to the knowledge and skills spelled out by these 12 statements, which I need to demonstrate to the professional world as a graduate engineer. If I am from mechanical engineering, I will be mostly working in mechanical domain. So in addition to the knowledge and skills spelled out by these 12 statements, I need some additional knowledge and skills required to demonstrate when I will be working in my profession as a mechanical engineer, which will be different from the knowledge and the skills which I need to demonstrate when I work as an electrical engineer. So is it not the responsibility of our program to develop those skills also? And to take care of that, NBA has come up with concept of PSOs. They are called as program specific outcomes. So they are outcomes like program outcomes, but the terminology program specific outcomes, because PSO statements spells out domain specific knowledge and skills vis-a-vis POs which specify generic knowledge and skills. So PSOs for mechanical engineering will be different from PSOs from civil engineering, whereas POs are same for mechanical, civil, electrical, or engineering. So you got why this concept of PSOs are. So when we talk about outcomes, when it comes to implementing POs plus PSOs, so these 12 graduate outcomes specified by POs plus 3 or 4 depending upon the domain, mechanical, civil, so maybe 16, 15, 17. So we will be having total 15, 16 statements spelling out the knowledge and the skills which the graduate of that particular discipline will be in a position to demonstrate. So that is where the concept of PSOs comes in. So PSO specifies the knowledge and the skills the students will be in a position to demonstrate to the professional world after completing the course. Actually, there is something wrong in this statement. Please excuse me for that. The definition is, okay, this is program outcomes. So PSO specifies domain specific knowledge and skills the students will be in a position to demonstrate to the professional. So depending upon the domain, whether I am from electrical engineering domain or mechanical engineering domain, or maybe subdomain of electrical engineering, if I'm working in drives area only, I have decided that my specialization will be in drives. If I'm working in cyber physical systems, it's a different one. Or working in smart grid, it will be different. So PSO specifies domain specific knowledge. So it's clear now why PSOs also becomes a component. If PSOs would not have spelled out generic knowledge and skills, we would not have used different terminology. But since the POs given by NBA are generic in nature, we need to talk about PSO. Otherwise, they are outcomes. Now, next comes COs. So, outcomes, POs plus PSOs. If POs itself are not generic and takes care of domain specific requirement, we will call it as outcomes. So these are the outcomes which we need to attain, because this spells out the knowledge and the skills which we need to develop. So we need to develop. Now, how we develop? How we are going to develop this? By teaching several course modules, doing the assessment and so on, isn't it? So normally the engineering programs are of 4 years duration, divided into 8 semesters. Every semester we have certain course modules to be taught to the students. And students will be undergoing instructions in those course modules. And after undergoing instructions in those modules, over a period of 8 semesters, they will be developing or they will be acquiring the knowledge and the skills spelled out by these POs plus PSOs. That means at the end of every course module, they will be acquiring certain knowledge and skills, which finally contributes in acquiring knowledge and skills which they are required to demonstrate to the professional world after completing the program, spelled out by POs and PSOs. So we are not defined after completing a program what knowledge and skills they need to demonstrate. But for 4 years, they will be undergoing instructions in various course modules. So don't you see that we need to structure the curriculum in such a manner that we will have relevant course modules. And after undergoing instruction in each course module, they will be acquiring some specific knowledge and skills which will finally contribute in developing the knowledge and skills which they need to demonstrate at the end of the program after completing the program. So don't you see that we need to spell out which specific knowledge and skills they will be acquiring after undergoing instruction in each course module? And that should contribute in acquiring the knowledge and the skills required to be demonstrated after completing the. Otherwise, everything will be done in ad hoc manner, because I already told you, it makes our system accountable, not like in earlier dispensation. Teachers comes to the class, teaches whatever he feels like teaching. No. Now you already spelled out that these are the skills which are required to be developed through your POs and PSOs. Now to develop them, you need to decide which course modules you will be teaching. And after undergoing instruction in each course module, which specific knowledge and skills he or she will be acquiring, that is also required to be spelled out, which will contribute into that. So here comes into picture what we call as COs or the course outcomes. So what are course outcomes? They are also outcomes, specifying knowledge and skills. But which knowledge and skills? The specific knowledge and skills which a student will be acquiring after undergoing instruction in each course module. So after deciding the course modules for developing the skills spelled out by POs and PSOs, you need to spell out the knowledge and skills which the student will be acquiring after undergoing instruction in each of the course modules. And the skills and the knowledge that they will be acquiring will contribute in attainment of POs and PSOs. So here comes into picture the COs. So once you decide your POs and PSOs, you need to decide the course module. Simply decide. Course module means not only deciding the content, because many people have a perception, especially teachers who belongs to my fraternity, their perception. Curriculum design means deciding only course modules, their contents. No. Not only contents, you need to specify which skills and the knowledge they will be acquiring after undergoing instruction in that course module. What pedagogy you will be using for that course module. What assessment you will be using for the course module. All these are the part of the curriculum. So whichever course modules you will have in the curriculum, for each course module, you need to specify which specific knowledge and skills the student will be acquiring, which finally contribute to this. So here comes into account COs, the course outcomes, and therefore course outcomes also becomes the part and parcel or constituent of it. And these COs must be aligned to the POs and PSOs already, because they should contribute to POs and PSOs. And in the morning session, already made a reference to the criticism of OBE. But it is really not a criticism of OBE, it's a problem with implementation of it. And the main criticism is that it's not possible to define the outcomes clearly and make it measurable. So when it comes to defining your COs, the following points are required to be kept in mind. For each course module, you will be defining COs, specifying the specific knowledge and the skills the students will be acquired. But they must fulfill this requirement, that they should reflect the learning of the student and should not be covering OBE. Why I'm making a reference to this? Because this will be covered sometimes later, maybe on the second or third day, whosoever will be talking about drafting COs, but I'm just making a cursory reference to what are the requirements. Because at many places, my personal observation is that COs are coverage oriented. Normally, the content of the course module are divided into 6 units. So there will be 6 COs. There is nothing, no restriction on the numbers. You may have 2 COs, you may have 4 COs. They should spell out what the learner will be able to know and learn. What the learner will be knowing and what he or she will be able to do after undergoing instruction. They should spell out that, not coverage oriented. Otherwise, 6 units, unit number 1, CO1, unit number 2, CO2, that is wrong, they should not be covered. You should take into account the alignment between course and the program. You should emphasize the ways in which learner is likely to use those skills. To elaborate upon this point, I will just take 1 or 2 minutes for this. We have certain common courses. Like we have a course of fluid mechanics for civil engineers as well as mechanical engineers. Contents are also many a times same. Will there COs be seen? See, alignment of that course with the program should be taken into account, because you know the fact that many a times mechanical engineers are working with flows through closed pipes, whereas civil engineers are most of the times working with flows through orifices and open channels. Depending upon that, some of the COs are required to be different. Another example, microprocessor course is same for electronics as well as CS. In both the courses, we talk about concept of bus. For electronics guys, bus is collection of wires over which the signals are carried out. But for CS guys, it's one of the resources. And if it is shared, we need some arbitration algorithm to design. Who will take into account this alignment of the course? Strength of material is another example for civil mechanical. So this is also required to be taken into account. So not all the COs should be same. Otherwise, perception is that microprocessor course is same, COs will be same. No. Transferable skills. That means the student should be able to apply the knowledge and skill in variety of contexts. For example, in computer science, we teach the students context-free grammar and regular expressions. Regular expressions, normally we used to specify the tokens. And normally we do it in a course like compiler construction. But see, the skill that the student will be acquiring of writing a proper regular expression will not only be used when it comes to designing a lexical analyzer for a compiler, but for designing any pattern recognizer, where the tokens are to be recognized. So we should talk about a skill which is applicable in wide variety of contexts. So a CEO should not say that the student will be in a position to specify the tokens for in the context of only compilers. Any pattern recognition. They should be limited in number. Otherwise, it becomes unwieldy. They should be measurable. Since they specify what a learner will be able to do, they must be specific enough to be measurable. That means they must indicate how learning will be assessed. To give an example, I will give an example from a different domain, humanities. Music. I have a CO statement for a particular course of music. The students will be able to appreciate, the students will be able to understand the theories of music. Now, if my CO statement says that after undergoing instruction in a course, students will be able to understand the theories of music. Now, how I will assess the understanding of the student, whether the student have understanding or not. That's why understand is not a proper action word with which our CO should be. I can reword the same and make it measurable. I will say that students will be able to describe the theories of music. And I can put a question in the examination, describe a particular theory of music. If he or she can describe, that means he or she has got an understanding. Avoid the words like understand, appreciate, to know, unclear. Computer science. In theory of computation, we talk about 4 models underlying the computation. I have a CO. Student will be able to understand models underlying the computation. How I will measure that understanding? Instead of that, if I say describe, then I can put a question, describe finite automata. If he or she can describe finite automata, that means there is. And it should take care of 6 levels of cognitive learning as per modified Bloom's taxonomy. So Bloom's taxonomy talks about the 6 levels of learning. Cognitive, it talks about cognitive skills. We are talking about only cognitive domain, not psychomotor and other. So these are some of the things that you have to keep in mind when you write COs. Of course, these things will be discussed in detail. So to sum up, the constituents of OBE are vision, mission statements, program educational objectives, and all outcomes. So program outcomes, program specific outcomes, and course outcomes. Now, why course outcomes are required? Because we can measure the attainment of these outcomes directly. Program outcomes you cannot measure directly because you are teaching a particular course module. So if your course outcomes specifying the specific knowledge and skills that the students will be acquiring after undergoing instruction in a course, at the end of that course, you can measure them directly through examination and other things. And they should be aligned to the PO. So they're indirectly contributing. So when it comes to implementing OB, you need to start with defining the vision statement. From vision statement, you draft an action plan of achieving the vision, mission statement. Then for each program that you are running, specify the intent with which you are running that program and accordingly how you will be required to do the management of teaching learning process. Then define outcomes, maybe specific as well as generic both. And then you will be basically teaching course modules for attainment of those outcomes. So for each course module, you have to define this. These are the constituents of syllabus. So that's all about the constitution. We will be going into details of how we should design the vision, mission statements, POs, and all those things. So that's all from my side. Now I'm open for questions, if any, and I will try my level best to answer those questions.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your insights regarding outcome-based education. So now we will have the discussion. Sir, we have some questions here. The first question is whether COs can be framed based on unit-wise syllabus or overall syllabus or learning parameters of the students.
Nothing, it should not be content based. Basically, they should spell out what the student will be able to do after undergoing instruction in a particular. For example, to give an example, engineering drawing, okay, is one of the courses that you are offering to first year students. What's the purpose of offering that course? Basically, as an engineer, student will be able to read and interpret drawings. Whereas the syllabus is divided into scales and all those things. So our COs talks about scales and no. Basically, what is the purpose? Workshop. When we have in first year, what is the purpose? Students should be able to use the various tools in the workshop. Students will be able to. The student should know what are the various standard operating procedures when they work on shop floor. This is what they're supposed to do. So your CO should spell out in terms of learning parameters, not in terms of the content. I'd given an example, some of the courses. Then English course. The purpose of English course is not basically, see, we are offering that course to develop the communication. When we say communication, all communication, written, oral, as well as presentation skills. The CO should talk about what the student will know and what student will be able to do after undergoing instruction in that course. So it should not be coverage oriented. Of course, it is linked with coverage. I'm not saying it is. You can look at it in isolation. It depends on the coverage, but our statement should not specifically talk about the content. It should talk about, based on this, what the student will be able to do. And that's why I said there is no restriction of the number. Otherwise, people are under impression that 6 units, we should have 6 COs, nothing like that. If you can, of course, it depends upon how you draft your statement. If you can summarize what the students will be able to know and do after undergoing instruction in a particular course in 2 statements, they're good enough. What you need to do is, you need to defend, because whenever you will be facing some accreditation visit, you need to defend. The evaluator will be asking why your COs are like this. If you can defend and convince, nothing like that. So it should not be coverage oriented. Because coverage oriented, very simple. The first unit is finite automata. First CO talks about students will understand finite automata. Like this people do. No. Why we are teaching finite automata to students? That they will be in a position to design some pattern recognizer. So that aspect is required to be kept in mind. Why we teach electrical machines to the students? Machines are used as drives. So when they will be entering into the profession, they will be in a position to choose the right type of drive depending upon the requirement. Not people write that students will understand the characteristic of induction motor, DC series motor. That's all they're learning. I'm not saying it has to be looked at in isolation. Without the knowledge of characteristics, load characteristic of various machines, they will not be in a position to choose. But the end, what they are required to demonstrate, they will be given application and they will have to suggest choice of a drive for that. So they are required to know all these things. But our COs normally, they should be in a position to draw or know the characteristic of DC series motor or something of that sort. So got the point? Next question. Hello?
Specific outcome of the department if it has narrowed down or streamlined for a specific program. Example, how electrical machines.
Can you please repeat?
Yes, sir. How the multidisciplinary course can be mapped to program specific outcome of the department if it has narrowed down or streamlined for a specific program. And the example, how electrical machines course will help mechanical students to learn and get mapped to program specific outcomes of mechanical. So that's the second question.
So for that, when you design a curriculum, you know the intent with which you are, you know the intention with which you have added the electrical machines program in the curriculum of mechanical engineering. There is some intention, you know. And as I already spelled out in OB, you know the program outcomes and program specific outcomes of mechanical engineering program. Am I right? Now, your curriculum design has to be a backward design process. Let us come out of that earlier mindset. I also learned thermodynamics because my basic degree is in electrical engineering, so I learned thermodynamics. Because that time this OB was not there in picture. Now, if I look at, as in today's context, as an electrical engineer, whether I'm supposed to know the thermodynamics, I may not find any relationship. But that time curriculum design was done like this. The teachers were deciding that we should have this course, we should have that course, based upon their perception. Now in OB, nobody's perception will come into picture. The curriculum design will not be driven by the whims and fancies of the teachers. I already made it clear that it is relevance which is going to decide. So you are designing a curriculum for mechanical engineering program. You know their POs and PSOs. And if for attainment of some of the POs or PSOs, you need a course module on electrical machines. Then only electrical machines will have in the curriculum. And if electrical machines finds its place in the curriculum because it contributes to some POs or PSOs, definitely the COs of this electrical machines program will be aligned with those POs and PSOs. It goes without saying. But if you find at the time of designing curriculum that none of the POs or PSOs attainment required to have a course module on electrical machines, it won't find a place. So every course module that you are having in your curriculum has got some role to play in attainment of some POs or PSOs. That's all I meant. So it will never happen when you go for curriculum design in OBE that you are having some COs which are not contributing to any POs or PSOs. That will never happen. That's why I said in OBE, curriculum design is a backward design process and not a forward design process. That's what I said. Whether I should have 5 mathematics courses or 2 physics courses, that will be decided by my program outcomes and program specific outcomes. Like for, let's say, computer science, electrical engineering, and civil engineering. Civil engineers, why should teach them in mathematics the Fourier transform, Z transform, Laplace transform? But Laplace transforms is more relevant for electrical electronics guys. Fourier transforms are more relevant. I should teach them the mathematics which they will be using in finite element method for civil engineers. That's the way the curriculum design is to be done. If that is the way the curriculum design is done, you will find that the mathematics course for civil engineer will be tailored for civil engineering. And its COs will definitely contribute in some or other PSOs of civil engineering. It will not be the case that you will be having COs for a mathematics course which are not at all contributing. It will never happen. So things have changed to that level. People have to change their mindset. It's very difficult for professors from mathematics to digest that, but it is the fact of the matter. In many institutions, they have started mathematics branch specific because they started implementing OP. The workshop we are talking about, the same workshop we are teaching to all the students, what IT and computer science guys has to do with the foundry and all those things. Even electrical engineers should have electrical workshop. So things are changing like this. So if you take the older curriculum, which was not designed taking into account this, yes, you will have the gaps. But if you do the curriculum design this way, you won't have any gaps. I think I could clarify your doubt.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So, sir, we don't have any more questions. So I think with this, we can conclude our forenoon session here now.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, sir. And thank you all participants. Please note, please use the same link for afternoon session also. We'll break for lunch now. We have our next session at 1:15 p.m. today. The session is Design of Vision, Mission, PEOs, POs, and PSOs by Dr. O.G. Kagdesa, Director, IIIT Nagpur. So by evening, once we are done with all today's all sessions, we will share the feedback form to each one of you. So once again, thank you, sir. Thank you all. We'll break for lunch now.
Most pleasure. We'll meet after lunch. Okay.
Yes, sir. By 1:15, we'll start the session, sir. Same link. Thank you all.